All right, Judith Eugene, come on. Judith Eugene is the president of the Loving Hands Group. All of you should have information on your table from Judith this morning. If you haven't had an opportunity to have Judith come out to your organization and speak, this certainly will give you the reason why you should have her come out. Judith does a lot of speaking engagements for our organization. She has a fascinating background. And she also gave you guys seeds in a little packet. I think it's called Sow
Only Seeds of Love.
Sow Only Seeds of Love. Judith is one of the most conscientious, kind people I think I've ever met. Talk about PSA, but she truly is. She does the detail work that most of us forget to do. So sometimes I'll just get a card in the mail from her, or like, congratulations that you made it to the next level. She's like, wow, Judith, that was really nice. She's just very, very kind. So, does a lot of training, does a variety of different topics. This morning we're going to talk about legacy writing, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but it's certainly a practice that I think would be really valuable if you're working with older adults. I know all of us can start working on this, so without further ado.
I think I'll stand over
She doesn't want
here.
to.
We'll see if I need this. Do you guys feel like I need it? Okay.
It's
okay.
nice, yeah.
Okay. So, this is a class that has been really popular with the seniors. So this is some of the information you guys can use for yourselves, and also with the seniors who you work with, or seniors who might be in your life in some other capacity too, parents and other relatives. A lot of times people think about doing this. We'd like to write our legacy, we'd like to do this, and it's sort of like this someday thing, and we don't know where to start, and how to do it, and what to include, and like what exactly are they, and all of these kinds of things. So I put together this program because there are a lot of different types of legacies that one can write, which is good, because not a lot of people consider themselves to be writers, so there are formats that people can write down and record things for their families or friends that they don't necessarily have to be the greatest writer. And that's kind of the neat thing about these, is that unless you're planning to publish it for public use, then most of the time it's just you and you're just kind of writing for yourself. So so this is usually a 1-hour class. It's going to be condensed into about half an hour, so I'm going to try to hold a microphone. It's even harder to hold a microwave and flip these. Maybe if I tried that, I'd be way better at holding a microphone.
We're all in the senior market. We all have those moments.
Yeah,
You're fine.
Yeah. So personal legacies, they are ways that you can document things that you've learned, lessons that you've learned, things that are important to you, experiences that you have had, anything that to you has made an influence on your life in some way, maybe formulated who you are as a person, maybe made you think about what you believe in and why, things like that. So why to write them? It's just very good ways to record things. Because you think about that, when older folks pass away, all of that knowledge that they've accumulated over a lifetime goes with them, unless they told someone about it, someone who has a better memory than I do. That all that goes with them. And so not only just their personal, who they are as a person, but they can also be like little time capsules of how things were in history at a certain time. What was it like in downtown Cleveland in 1920? We don't have that experience of knowing that. And so hearing some of these stories come out is just like really fascinating. Back when the West Side Market was the grocery store, and that's where people went. So different things like that. It can be a historical time capsule. And these kinds of things are often more meaningful bequests that you can leave for your family than your material possessions. Material possessions and money, that's wonderful and great, but these things sometimes can be far more meaningful to leave for people to know about. The process of writing, some people also find that to be very therapeutic, so that's a really good just perk of doing this. A lot of times there may be some things, we'll talk later a little bit about, family issues. Sometimes those things come up, and sometimes it can be therapeutic just to write about those things and get them out. And just a great way to reflect on who you used to be, who you are now, and what's left, what you still want to accomplish. And so these kinds of things get people thinking about that, about all of those things. Really great ways to deepen relationships too with people. So a few different types of legacies that people can write. The first really simple one, and it's just a journal. Just keeping a journal, usually next to the bed. You kind of write in your journal before you go to sleep. So that's the most casual, I guess, or informal method of keeping a legacy of what's important to you. So those contain mostly thoughts and feelings. You can record events that happened that particular day, but usually mostly it's your thoughts and feelings about those events that happened or about your interactions with other people that day. Then there are autobiographies. Autobiographies are kind of the most formal types of legacies. So autobiographies are chronological depictions of your life over time. So you kind of start from your earliest memory, whatever that might have been, and up through the current day. So they tend to be chronological, tend to be less on the feelings and emotions content and more on facts, names, dates, places, things like that. So that's an autobiography. So we've seen, like, a lot of famous people will publish their autobiography, Winston Churchill and things like that. So those are the most kind of popular published types of legacies. And then family histories are similar to autobiographies in that it includes not just your autobiography, but the autobiographies of other family members. And then you compile that into one family history book. And then you can decide how far you want to go. Is it just your siblings? Do you want to branch out into aunts, uncles, cousins, all those kinds of things, kind of up to you. And then there's a really, really, really interesting thing called an ethical will. Just curious, has anyone heard of ethical wills? Have you? Great. So these are interesting because they're not. The attorney will let you know they're not legal documents, right? They're not legal documents. So the will part of it can be a little misleading for people. But what it is it's a way to bequeath your ethics, your morals, your values, what you believe in, who you are, why you are who you are, and put those into a document. So it's really, really an interesting class for me to teach because we really get people thinking. A lot of times we kind of know who we are, but when we sit down and think about it, and I give them a lot of different questions, we'll do a little exercise together in a few minutes about that, and it gets you thinking about really who not just who are you, but why are you who you are, and what has happened, and what are the reasons, and how firm are you in that particular belief or in that particular habit that you may have had for a while. So ethical wills are really neat. And then there's also something called a memoir, which is kind of a little bit of a hybrid between the autobiography and the ethical will. So a memoir, you are talking about things that have happened in your life, but you don't have to necessarily go chronologically like you do with an autobiography. You can choose what events or circumstances or things that you want to write about in your memoir, and then usually combine it with some more thoughts and feelings types of things. So that's kind of an overview. And then there are family trees, which are kind of a subset of all this. And those we kind of know. It's sort of like names, dates, and places, and you organize that tree starting if you can trace it all the way back, and then all the branches of the tree coming out. And there are lots of good, Ancestry.com is probably, that's kind of what, now these days, what I recommend people do. It used to be you had to go to lots of different places and research, but it can be very, very interesting. I've researched all 4 branches of my grandparents, and it is a labor of love for sure, because for every question that you answer, you get 3 more questions that you need to research. So it's kind of never ending, but it just makes it a fun little hobby. So as far as what type of legacy you write or that you recommend someone write, it just kind of depends on what your goals are, how much time you have, how much you like writing, how much detail you want to go into, how personal you want to get. So it's nice that there are such a variety of types available, so people can choose what works. So when to write? I advise people to start as soon as possible. Like I said, it's something that you're either interested in doing this or you're not, but the people who are interested in doing it, it's like something they've been thinking about for a really long time. But gosh, how do I get started? What do I do? seems like this huge daunting task, and it can be a big task. I mean, there can be, if you're really going to go back and look back over history, there can be a lot to write about. So if you're a person who really wants to do that, just getting started that's what I just tell people, just get started. And then it doesn't, once you get the ball rolling, you get that like momentum going, then it doesn't seem as daunting because it starts to roll and get going. So as soon as possible, and I'll give some tips on like how to get started. So who you're writing this for, that's also a personal choice. You don't necessarily have to share these things with other people. You can just use it, like I said, as that therapeutic process to write yourself and to just get these thoughts clearly down on paper. Or you can choose to share it with people. You can choose to share it with people before your death, which is often nice because they can become really great conversation starters. And sometimes, especially within families, we kind of assume somebody knows something, or we assume somebody doesn't know something, and when these subjects get talked about and they come out, like, it's really neat how much you can learn about somebody that you thought you already knew inside and out. And so they're really great conversation starters while you're still living. Or you can just wait till that, have it be one of your, along with your legal documents when you pass away, just as sort of a surprise gift to leave to folks. So, talked a little bit about touchy subjects. Every family is going to have something, right? Every family's got some disappointment. Somebody did something they shouldn't have done, or didn't do something that they should have done, and and some of them can be more severe than others. So that's a question that pops up a lot from the seniors, like, what do I do about that? And that is a personal decision. If it's something that you would find, again, therapeutic for you to write about and get that out, sometimes these documents can be really good places to ask for forgiveness from people, or to give forgiveness to somebody that you haven't been able to face-to-face. Sometimes doing it in writing is a little bit easier. They should not be forums for blaming and belittling people. That's something that you should do, or no, you should never blame or belittle, but if there is some unresolved issues between family members, it's kind of best leaving that off the table and doing that on a one-on-one basis. Or if it's something that the person feels like might cause a rift, like sometimes there is something really unfortunate that happens in a family, and the family just decide they're not going to talk about it. And by writing about it, if it could cause a real rift in the family, it's probably best to leave that thing out of it. So you have to really contemplate what your motives are for wanting to write about something, those types of issues, and what effects that it might have on others. So that's a personal decision, but it does come up a lot. So, people say, well, what if I'm not a good writer, or what about spelling and punctuation and grammar and all that stuff? So, since this is just for you, as I said, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be a great writer, as long as you can write somewhat legibly. And there is a little bit of problem teaching this to seniors because a lot of them are not computer savvy, so they do end up writing by hand. It's beautiful handwriting, so it's like a lost art, So then there are services where people can transpose that, take that up for them if they want that done. Or, there's nothing wrong with just putting your handwritten stuff on the Xerox, and that's your legacy. I mean, it doesn't have to be super formal. There's also a really neat computer program called Dragon, Naturally Speaking. Have you guys heard about that? So people, you speak and it types. So you can write out what you want to say and have it ready, and then and the computer, there's a couple of little training questions so the computer gets to understand and recognize your voice. But then, so that can be also a solution too for seniors who aren't able to type, or maybe people with physical disabilities who aren't able. So that's another option. But when I teach this class, I do give out little handouts on grammar and punctuation and spelling, and when you use your and those kinds of things like that to go around on Facebook. So. But you don't. The good thing is that you don't have to worry too much about it being really perfect. Like I said, unless you're going to publish it for people to read, then don't worry too much about that. And then there are editors who can, if you are intending to do that, or you really are concerned about the format and the technique, there are editors who can help you with that. There's also people who are ghostwriters if you really feel like, I can't write at all. There are people you can hire that you just kind of tell them verbally and they will write for you. So how do you get started? So journaling, that one's fairly simple. So buy a journal, start writing. So you just kind of pick a blank book that you like and keep that next to your bed, and it's usually something people do in the evening after you can reflect back on your day and write the things down. So it's a good idea to date them and put the year on there if you are going to eventually leave this for people. My mom kept a lot of journals, which I don't know that she wasn't necessarily bequeathed, but you know that when she passed away, they were all there. So it was helpful that she had put the dates and the years at the top, so we knew we could kind of piece together this chronology of things that she had written. And it was really, really neat to see how somebody evolves over time, you know, personal thoughts and all of that. So that's neat. Autobiographies and family histories. Let's start out just by jotting down. So just start to think about memories, whatever they may be, places that you live, you know, teachers, events, different things like that. Just start jotting down things that you remember. Once you do this, once you start doing this, you're going to be thinking about it a lot. So I always like to keep a little notebook with you in your pocket or your purse, so that if something pops into your head, well, now we all have phones too. You could just, you know, text message yourself or however you send yourself notes, put it in your phone. But just so that you don't forget when things pop up into your head, keep those with you. So when you're making your little bullet notes, then start to put them in chronological order, and that sort of starts the format for your autobiography. And ethical wills and memoirs. Well, actually, we're going to go over a little ethical will exercise. So those, again, you can choose what you want to put in. So just as thoughts come up and you remember, jot it down. But sometimes, too, people will start making notes and not actually start writing for a long time later. I've run into a lot of seniors who have said, oh, yeah, you know, I've been keeping these notebooks, and I want to write about, you know, make it more of a formal presentation. But so you might be going back years of things you wrote down years ago. So it's good to try to be as complete as you can in your thoughts when you write them down. Instead of just writing down, you know, childhood home, you might write down childhood home on Orchard Street that had the big tree outside my window that I used to sneak out and climb down in the middle of the night, or something, you know, something like that, so that you remember what you meant when you just wrote down childhood home. So as far as when is the best time to share your legacy, as we were saying, you might not want to share it at all, which is perfectly fine. It might just be something that you're just doing for yourself. But sharing it before you pass away can really bring up some interesting and meaningful conversations with people. And then after your death, and you might even want to do maybe a little bit of both. Share it with people who are real close to you before your death, and maybe choose some passages that you would like to have read to people who come to honor you after your death. So that's something interesting to do. A lot of times, that's not something, I don't know, we put together a lot of legal documents and things that we really need when we pass away, but I don't know, do a lot of people think about your funeral service? I don't think about it, but it would be useful, because I know, you know, when my mother passed away, you kind of hope that you're saying what she would want you to say, and we all knew her really well, and she had a very vibrant personality, so, but you know, if there's something you really want said, say it, let people know, so this is a good way to do that. So, other little tips, great ways to inspire your memories, to remember things that maybe you've forgotten, to go back like through old photo albums. Remember when we used to actually print pictures out? Photo albums. And go through, like, you know, if you have a scrapbook, if your parents kept a scrapbook for you, things like that, old newspaper clippings that you've collected. So those are good ways to say, oh, that's right, I forgot about that person or that thing, whatever that might be. And then it's a good idea to set yourself some kind of writing goal. If you really want to get this finished, we're all terribly busy, so we have to give it some kind of deadline or some kind of regular schedule, or it just isn't going to happen. It'll get lost in everything else that we have to do. So I always say, is there some kind of deadline that you want to get this written by? Is there a family reunion coming up? Is there a holiday coming up where you want to share this? And that's a specific deadline. And sometimes there isn't. So in that case, just set up something that you can stick with. You don't want to set up a goal that you're going to fail at. So if it's like, okay, once a week on Sunday afternoon, that's what I'm going to do for half an hour or whatever it might be. Just set up something for you that works and seems manageable. And then you can, if you want to, get input from your family about maybe some things that you may have forgotten, some other memories. Sometimes it's real good. They can help to jog your memory a little bit. You can also get creative and stick some things in there, like different documents or newspaper clippings or photographs that help to tell the story of that point in time. And then just keep adding and developing as you go along until you get it finished. And so it really is a neat, very personal thing, and it's really helpful to family members. I taught this class at a couple years ago now, but at the Cleveland Heights Senior Center, and it was neat because instead of just a 1-hour class, they had me come in for 4 weeks. So not only did we talk about how to do it, but we got the people started and actually got them writing. And once you get that 4-week investment of writing, you're less likely to put it down. But it was really neat. The dynamics of the class was very interesting too, because it got a lot of people talking, and they got to know each other, and a lot of common experiences were coming out because these were people of a similar generation. So it was really neat how much common threads there were, how much we learned about history from hearing these people talk. And then just their comments about how it was bringing them closer to their family, their siblings, or their children, because they were calling them to ask them things as they were writing, and so it was starting all these conversations about happy memories. So it was really, really neat. So they're always really good experiences. So we are going to do we have 10 minutes? Okay. So I want to take a few minutes. I'm going to do an ethical will exercise with you guys. So if you have a piece of paper, that little white piece of paper on your table. Oh, before I forget, there is a little, one of those white pieces of paper will tell you where you can go on my website to download all of this. So if you didn't have time to write everything down, you can go and just download all my notes from the class or on that piece of paper. So I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I ask the seniors when we do our ethical will class, and we'll take a minute between each one and take some time to really consider this and think about your answers to these questions. So here's the first one. If you had your life to live over again, what would you do differently? Take a minute to think about that.
Just one thing.
What's that? Yeah. Or several things if you've had a lot of lessons to learn. So if you had your life to live over again, what would you do differently?
You don't have enough paper.
Now, if you had your life to live over again, what would you do the same? So here's another question for you. What would you like people to remember most about you? And these can always be more than one thing if you think, oh my God. To adopt a religion. Do you donate to and why? Name one person you admire and why. And this can be someone in your personal life, or this could be a public figure also. What do you believe are the 3 most important qualities that every person should possess? fear that you've been able to get over in your life, and how are you able to get over it? What do you think have been your 3 greatest accomplishments in life? Best friend, and why are they your best friend? If you could go to heaven and meet 3 people, who would you meet? And you can come back after you meet. And why? And I suppose if you wanted to go to hell and meet somebody too, you could have that freedom.
That's a holy story.
You could come back too. What advice did your parents give you that you wish you had listened to but you didn't? Did anybody learn anything surprising about themselves when they stopped to think about this stuff? It's kind of like, this is stuff we sort of know. It's like, you know, it's there somewhere, but when you start to really bring it, when somebody like literally asks you the question, you start to bring it to the forefront, and then you start asking why, it's really interesting. And I think it's, another class that I teach is about living an intentional life and not just living out of habit. And so I think this is a good way to make us really take a look at who we are, why we're that way, and you know, a lot of times this leads to, wow, do I still want to be that way? This ethical goal class brings that up a lot for folks. Like, you know, did I turn out the way I thought I would? What do I still need to do to get to where I still want to go? So, thank you, everybody. Anybody have any questions on any of this? Great. Well, thank you for listening and for being here today.